My ex made sure my daughter grew up thinking I was the villain. One day, she found me, furious. You ruined Mom's life. I just handed her a folder full of court records and said, she did that herself. I never expected to be a father whose child hated him. I never expected to have my name spoken like it was a curse by the daughter I would have done anything for. But life has a way of handing out the worst hands to the people who don't deserve them. I used to have a family. A wife, a daughter, a home filled with love. At least, I thought I did. Turns out, the person I had vowed to spend my life with had other plans, and in the end, I became the villain in a story I never even got to tell. I met Sophia in college. She was everything I wasn't: charismatic, outgoing, the kind of person who made you feel like you belonged even if you were standing alone in a crowded room. I fell fast and hard. She made me believe in the kind of love people write about. We got married 2 years later. Not a big wedding, just close family and friends in the backyard of her parents' house in Denver, Colorado. It felt right. A year later, we had our daughter, Lena. And for a while, it was good. Really good. Then, little by little, things started slipping. At first, it was just small things. She started working late, taking on more freelance clients. She'd leave for meetings at odd hours. When I asked questions, she'd get defensive, tell me I was suffocating her, that I didn't trust her. I wanted to trust her. So I backed off. Biggest mistake of my life. One night, I was up late in my home office finishing up work when I heard her phone vibrate. I glanced over. It was past midnight. The screen lit up, and a message popped up. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. I miss you already. Red heart, my stomach dropped. I wish I could say I calmly picked up the phone and looked through it like a rational person. I didn't. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. But I forced myself to read through the messages. It didn't take long to realize the person she'd been seeing was my best friend, Chris. The same Chris who had been my best man. The guy who had held Lena in the hospital when she was just a few hours old. The guy I had trusted with everything. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the screen. Eventually, I put the phone back down and sat in the dark, trying to process what I had just read. She got home an hour later. I was still sitting in the same spot. She took one look at me and knew. I confronted her. She denied it at first, then when I showed her the messages, she started crying. Told me she was lonely, that I had been distant since Lena was born. Said she didn't mean to hurt me. I told her we could work through it, that I didn't want to throw everything away without trying. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, I don't love you anymore. I don't think anything could have hurt more than that. She packed a bag that night, took Lena, and went to stay with her parents. A week later, I got divorce papers. And that was the beginning of the real nightmare. She wanted full custody. I refused. So we went to court. And if you've ever been a father fighting for custody, you already know how that goes. Sophia painted me as unstable. Said I was a workaholic who had neglected her, that I was too emotionally distant to be a good father. She played the victim so well you would have thought she deserved an Oscar. Chris was right there in court, backing her up, talking about how Sophia had been unhappy for years and how he had been her emotional support. I brought up the affair. The judge didn't care. Colorado courts favor the mother unless there's clear evidence of abuse or neglect. And since I had been nothing but a reliable, responsible parent, they didn't see any reason to take Lena away from her loving mother. Sophia got full custody. I got weekends. At first, I made it work. I drove to see Lena every chance I got, even when Sophia made it difficult, canceling last minute, making excuses, forgetting to tell me when they were out of town. Then one day, she told me she was moving. First, to Austin, Texas. Then, a year later, to Portland, Oregon. Always just far enough to make it harder for me to see Lena. I fought it. Took her back to court. Spent thousands trying to get my rights enforced. But she had primary custody. And she knew how to play the system. Phone calls stopped going through. Letters were returned. I flew out to Oregon once, hoping to surprise Lena at her school. They had transferred her to a different one. Sophia had made sure I was erased from her life. The last time I saw her in person, she was 10. She didn't call me Dad. Just Ethan. After that, I stopped fighting. Not because I didn't love her, but because forcing my way in would only make it worse. Years passed. I moved on. Met someone new. Built a life for myself in Seattle, Washington. But I never stopped thinking about Lena. Then, out of nowhere, she found me. She was 18 now. Angry. She showed up at my doorstep, fist clenched, face red. I barely recognized her. She had her mother's eyes. She didn't hug me. She didn't cry. She just looked me in the eye and said, "You ruined Mom's life." It took everything in me to stay calm. I asked her who told her that. She scoffed. "Who do you think?" She told me everything. "You cheated. You abandoned me. You didn't want us. She had to do everything on her own because you left." I almost laughed at the irony. But there was nothing funny about any of this. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just walked into my office, grabbed a thick folder from my filing cabinet, and handed it to her. She gave me a confused look. "Read it," I said. Inside were copies of court records, email exchanges, letters I had sent that were never answered. proof of every time I had tried to see her. She opened it. And for the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. She flipped through the pages. Her hands started to shake. She didn't speak, didn't look at me. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she closed the folder, held it against her chest, and walked out. No goodbye. No questions. Nothing. And now, I wait. I don't know if she'll come back. I don't know if she'll ever believe me. But for the first time in 18 years, I think there's a chance she might. I didn't hear from her for weeks. Not a text. Not a call. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it might be her. Every time the mail arrived, I checked for a letter. Nothing. I tried to tell myself I had done all I could, that it wasn't in my hands anymore. But the silence ate at me. Then, one night, nearly a month later, my phone rang. It was an Oregon number. I answered before I could think. A shaky voice. It was all a lie. Lena. She sounded different. Not angry. Just lost. She lied to me. About everything. I gripped the phone, not trusting myself to speak. I found old emails. Messages between her and Chris. They were still together for years after she left you. He was married the whole time. He never even left his wife for her. He just played both of them. Mom called him the love of her life. But he had another family. A real one. Not us. I closed my eyes. I had always known about the affair, but I had no idea it had continued that long. I had assumed she moved on. I never wanted to dig into it. But now Lena was learning the truth, piece by piece, the same way I had all those years ago. She told me you abandoned us. That you didn't want me. That you cheated. But I found letters. She kept them in a box in the garage. Ones you sent me for my birthdays. For Christmas. She never let me see them. A lump formed in my throat. I spent my whole life hating you. Her voice cracked. And it was all for nothing. I didn't know what to say. I just listened as my daughter unraveled. She didn't show up at my door again. But she called me more after that. Small conversations at first. She asked about Seattle, my job, my life. Then, one night, she asked me the question I had been dreading. Why didn't you try harder? I let out a slow breath. I did, Lena. I fought for you. I went to court. I spent everything I had trying to be in your life. But your mom made sure I couldn't reach you. She moved you across the country. She blocked my calls. She told the courts I wasn't a good father. And they believed her. Silence. I thought if I kept pushing, she'd only make it worse. That if I forced my way in, it would hurt you more. So I stopped fighting. Not because I wanted to, but because I thought it was the only way to keep you safe. More silence. I get it now, she finally said. A few months later, she asked to meet again. I was careful not to push. I told her I'd love to see her, but only if she was ready. She was. We met at a coffee shop halfway between Seattle and Portland. When I walked in, I spotted her right away, sitting by the window. She looked different from the last time. She wasn't angry. She wasn't stiff. She looked like she was seeing me for the first time. Hey, she said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like we hadn't just spent 18 years apart. We talked for hours. About everything and nothing. About life. About her plans. She had just started college. She wanted to study psychology. I think I want to help people like me, she said. People who've been lied to. I didn't know whether to feel proud or devastated. After that, we kept in touch. She even started visiting on weekends. At first, just for the day. Then overnight. Then, once for an entire week. She met my wife, my stepdaughter. It was awkward at first, but she tried. Then one night, she told me she was going back to Oregon to confront her mom. I told her to be careful. I told her I would be here no matter what happened. Then, a few days later, I got another call. Her voice was hollow. She still won't admit it. I closed my eyes. She says I'm brainwashed. That you manipulated me. That the court stole me from her. Even after I showed her the letters. The emails. Even after I told her I know what she did. I sighed. I don't think she'll ever tell the truth, Lena. I know. Her voice was quiet. I wanted her to care. I didn't know how to tell her that some people will never admit what they've done. That some people will burn the whole world down before they take responsibility. She had to learn it on her own. And now she had. A week passed. Then two. Then, one evening, she called again. I'm moving out. I sat up straighter. I can't stay here. I can't keep pretending. I've been living in a house built on lies, and I can't do it anymore. I tried to keep my voice steady. Where will you go? Silence. Then, finally, can I stay with you? I gripped the phone. Of course. That was 3 months ago. Lena is living with me now. She's still figuring things out, still healing. Some nights, she's quiet. Other nights, she's angry. But at least now, she knows the truth. I don't know if she'll ever speak to her mom again. I don't know if her mom will ever stop trying to twist the story. But I do know this. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, my daughter sees me. And that's enough. For now. Lena had been living with me for 3 months when the next twist came. It was a Sunday evening, and we were in the kitchen. I was making dinner, and she was sitting at the counter, scrolling through her phone, looking more at ease than I'd ever seen her. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Froze. I saw the blood drain from her face. What is it? I asked, setting down the knife. She swallowed. It's Chris. I stared at her, not sure I'd heard right. Chris? My? Yeah. She turned the phone toward me. It was a message. Hey, kiddo. I know this is unexpected, but I'd love to talk. I think there are some things you deserve to hear. Call me when you can. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What does he want? I asked. She shook her head. I don't know, but I think I'm going to find out. I didn't want her to. I didn't trust him, but I knew better than to tell her what to do. Just be careful, okay? She nodded. She called him the next day. She didn't say much about it afterward, just that he wanted to meet in person, that he had regrets. Do you think I should go? She asked me that night. I didn't want her anywhere near him, but I also knew she was searching for closure. If you do, make sure you're the one in control of the conversation, and meet him somewhere public. So she did. A week later, she drove down to Portland to meet him at a coffee shop. I spent the whole day on edge, checking my phone every 5 minutes. Then, finally, around 6, she called. That was intense. What happened? She hesitated. He told me everything. I gripped the phone tighter. Everything. Mom didn't just lie about you. She lied about him too. My heart pounded. What do you mean? She let out a shaky breath. She told me they were soulmates. That he was the love of her life. That he would have married her if he could. That she lost everything because of you. She laughed bitterly. Turns out, he was the one who tried to leave her. Asterisk, I felt my jaw clench. He said she became obsessed with him. She was never supposed to move to Austin. He told her it was a bad idea, that he was staying with his wife. But she followed him anyway. She told his wife everything. Tried to blow up his marriage. But instead of leaving his wife, he cut her off completely. I exhaled sharply. So she made it sound like he abandoned her? Yeah. And what did he say about me? She went quiet. He said he didn't realize how far she was going to go. That he thought she was just venting about you. That he never expected her to take you to court and erase you from my life. I closed my eyes. And do you believe him? Another pause. No. That was my girl. That night, she told me the whole conversation. Chris claimed he was remorseful. That he wished things had been different. That he wanted to make things right. But Lena wasn't stupid. He just wants to clear his conscience, she said. That's all this is. So what now? I asked. She shrugged. I blocked his number. I don't need closure from him. I just wanted to know the truth. I nodded. But something about it didn't sit right. Because if Chris really wanted to make things right, why now? Why after all these years? And then, a week later, I found out. Lena was at work when I got the call. An unknown number. Portland area code. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another call. Then a text. Ethan, it's Sophia. We need to talk. It's important. I stared at the screen. She was the last person I ever expected to hear from. I had spent years hating her, then years trying not to think about her at all. And now, out of nowhere, she wanted to talk? I didn't respond. Then another text came through. It's about Lena. And just like that, I was back in her game. I called her. The second she answered, I could hear it. She was drunk. Ethan, she breathed. I wasn't sure if you'd call. What do you want? I said coldly. She let out a slow, shaky breath. He's lying to her, she said. I gritted my teeth. You mean Chris? Yes. He's manipulating her. Just like he manipulated me. He's trying to turn her against me, Ethan. And I know we've had our differences, but you can't let that happen. I let out a bitter laugh. You mean the way you turned her against me? Silence. Then, in a small, desperate voice, I just need you to listen. For a second, I almost felt bad for her. Then I reminded myself what she had done. I don't owe you anything, I said. But you love Lena, don't you? She whispered. I know you do. And I'm telling you, Chris is dangerous. She broke off. I waited. He what, Sophia? Silence. And then, just before she hung up, he's not who you think he is. I don't know what she meant. I don't know if it was just another one of her lies, another attempt to control the story. But something about the way she said it felt different. And now, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over yet. Lena didn't believe Sophia. Neither did I. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something we were missing. Lena was done with Chris, but she had already cut off her mother, so she wasn't exactly willing to take her warning seriously. And honestly, I didn't blame her. But I had spent years thinking I had seen the full picture, only to realize I had barely scratched the surface. And now, something about Sophia's voice, the way she sounded not just desperate but scared, kept ringing in my head. I wasn't about to let her drag me back into her web of manipulation, but I needed to know. So I called Chris. It went straight to voicemail the first time. The second time, he picked up. Ethan? His voice was wary. Yeah. Why are you calling me? Because I think you're hiding something. A long pause. Then, a quiet chuckle. Haven't heard from you in what? A decade? And now you suddenly want answers. Cut the crap, Chris. Oh, so now you care? His tone sharpened. Where was all this energy when your wife was throwing herself at me? Where was all this fight when you let her walk out and take your daughter? I clenched my jaw. Don't turn this around on me. Just tell me what the hell is going on. Another long silence. Then, meet me in Portland. In person. If you really want the truth. And then he hung up. I didn't tell Lena. Not at first. I wasn't about to drag her into something that could be another pointless mind game. So I drove down alone. I met Chris at some rundown bar outside of Portland. He was already at a booth, nursing a whiskey, looking rough. Older. Tired. He didn't say anything as I sat down. Just studied me for a moment before letting out a dry laugh. You look good, man. Cut the small talk. He sighed. You want the truth? He swirled his drink. Fine. Here's the truth. Sophia was worse than you ever knew. I didn't just sleep with your wife, Ethan. I got stuck with her. I stared at him. What the hell does that mean? It means she wasn't just obsessed with me. She was unhinged. I folded my arms. So now you're the victim? He gave me a look. You think I wanted my whole life blown up over her? That I wanted to lose my wife, my job, everything? She told me she was on birth control. She lied. Got pregnant. Told my wife everything and thought I would just leave and start some perfect life with her. I felt my stomach drop. She was pregnant? Chris nodded. She lost the baby a few months in. And after that, she went off the deep end. Called my wife every night. Sent letters to my boss about our affair, trying to ruin me after she realized I wasn't leaving my family. She would show up at my house, screaming, threatening to take everything from me. I exhaled. So that's why she left Austin. Yeah, she wasn't running to Portland. She was running from it. Chris leaned forward. She's dangerous, Ethan. She's always been dangerous. And now? She's desperate. She lost her control over Lena, and she knows it. So if she's reaching out to you now, it's not because she cares. It's because she's about to do something reckless. I swallowed hard. Like what? Chris shook his head. I don't know. But if I were you, I'd make sure Lena stays the hell away from her. I drove back in a fog. Chris was a liar and a coward. But if even he was afraid of Sophia, then something was very, very wrong. And I had a sick feeling in my gut that I was about to find out what. I told Lena everything. She didn't believe me at first. She's insane. Yeah, but she's not dangerous. Are you sure? She hesitated. That was all I needed. Lena, I know you want to be done with her. But I don't trust this. She's already lost you, and now she's reaching out to me. What? She swallowed. I don't know. Then let's find out. We didn't call her. We showed up. It was a stupid idea. I know that now. But we needed to corner her before she had time to spin another web. Lena knocked on her door. Sophia opened it, looking disheveled, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. And then she saw me. Her face paled. Ethan, we need to talk, Lena said. Sophia's eyes darted between us. You shouldn't be here. Why not? Lena stepped forward. Afraid I'll find out even more of your lies. Sophia let out a shaky breath. You don't understand. No, I do, Lena snapped. You've been lying my whole life. About Dad. About Chris. About everything. And now you're playing the victim again because you finally lost control. Just admit it. Sophia looked at me, pleading. Ethan, she deserves the truth, I said. Something inside her cracked. The truth, she whispered. Fine. You want the truth? You want to know why I did it? She let out a bitter laugh. Because I loved you, Ethan. And you never loved me back. Lena's mouth fell open. What? Sophia's eyes locked onto mine, wild and desperate. You never loved me, Ethan. Not the way I wanted. You loved being a father. You loved the idea of me. But you never looked at me the way you should have. And I hated you for it. She turned to Lena. And then you were born. And you became his whole world. And I saw it in his eyes. He loved you more than he ever loved me. And I knew I would never be enough. So I took you away. Because if I couldn't have him, then neither could you. Lena took a step back. You ruined my life because you were jealous? I gave you everything. Sophia shouted. And you threw it away for him. Lena shook her head, disgusted. You need help, Mom. Sophia's breath hitched. Don't you call me that. That's what you are, isn't it? Lena's voice was steel. My mother? Even if you never actually acted like one? Sophia's face twisted. You're just like him. Good, Lena said. I'd rather be like him than you. And then she turned and walked away. I followed. Sophia didn't stop us. She just stood there, alone, shaking with rage, and something else, something hollow. And as we drove away, Lena finally broke. She cried, sobbed into her hands, the weight of it all finally crushing her. I just held her. And for the first time in 18 years, my daughter let me. I don't know what happens next. Sophia lost everything. I don't think she'll ever stop trying to rewrite the story. But I don't care anymore. Because my daughter is finally free. And for the first time in a long, long time, so am I.